Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to Early Childhood Chats. Andy Roszak with you as always. And today we're diving into a topic that's, boy, it's not just shaping education, but it's really shaping society itself in many ways. And that is artificial intelligence. And, you know, I was preparing for our wonderful guest today, and I was reflecting back into my time as a high school student in the 90s and all the wonderful things that were going on back then, dialing up on the 2400 baud modem with the America Online CDs and Netscape and all that kind of crazy stuff. And hearing some of the adults and some of our teachers say, this is just a fad. Someone's going to pull the plug on all this someday and all that kind of stuff. And of course, now we fast forward and boy, there's really not a facet of our life that is not being touched in some way by the internet or all the new and emerging technologies. So in many ways, I think we're about to live through that moment again, but this time with AI. And my guest today is someone I'm very excited to talk to. He's someone who understands that probably better than almost anybody. But Jeffrey Riley is a former Massachusetts Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education. And before that, he really led one of the most ambitious school turnarounds in the country over at Lawrence Public Schools, and his great work and innovation there. He's been a teacher, he's been a principal, a district leader, state leader, and now he's executive director at the Day of AI, which was born out of MIT. So the guy's a very smart guy, man. He's been to all sorts of good stuff, been to Harvard and everything else. So super excited to talk with Jeffrey today and find out more about his background. Also, we'll talk about a lot of the resources that Day of AI is creating. And up there at the top of the list is stuff for families, talking to kids about AI, a toolkit they've recently released with Common Sense Media, simple kid-friendly activities, really describing, you know, what AI is. How do we understand algorithms? How do we understand bias? How do we be safe in this new environment? So, you know, super excited to dive into all of this stuff. And Jeff, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to folks. Thank you so much for being here. It's a real pleasure to get to talk to you today.
Andy, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, so I'm Jeff Riley. I spent 32 years in public K-12 education. Started as a teacher, was a counselor, basically did every job, and ended as the Commissioner of Education for Massachusetts. I was getting ready to what I call retire when MIT called me and said, hey, do you want to help us launch a nonprofit out of MIT focused on AI and education? And, you know, I was pretty simple. I only had one question. Can I say what I want? And I actually think that actually confused them and concerned them a little bit. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, 15 years ago, we didn't do a good job regulating social media, and the research coming out appears to show that we've got rising rates of mental health issues with our students. And so AI is an incredibly powerful tool. I'm very excited about what it can do in education, but there's also some bad things associated with AI, and we want to make sure that we prepare and protect our kids first and foremost before they learn the AI skills that they're going to need to be competitive in a future economy.
So your organization is really multifaceted. You've got a lot of great resources, again, for families, but you've also got curriculum. You've also got teacher education, professional development offerings. How would you kind of describe everything that you're doing in kind of a nutshell here? Because it looks like a lot.
There's a lot going on. So yeah, so we're a fusion of what I would call young MIT techies and experienced, read that as old, educators like myself. And the techies, you know, they really understand what this new tech is and where it's going. And the educators, we hope, like myself, know how to apply it in schools. And so it's just been this fabulous fusion of people getting together on this small but mighty team. And we really just do three things. We train teachers and administrators on how to effectively use AI. We help them with policy. And then we build AI curriculum that can be used for teachers and families to make sure that everybody is learning how to use AI safely and productively.
Well, and I would totally recommend it. Check out the website. We'll obviously put it here in the show notes as well. But I thought it was fascinating stuff that you guys are doing. And, you know, I was looking at some of the data from your curriculum in use by over, 2 million, I believe you've already impacted around the world. 2 million students and teachers have come in contact with your curriculum. And what I thought was super interesting was almost 20% are kids ages, 5 to 8, which starts or 5 to 7, if I misspoke there, sorry. But really kind of thinks about, gosh, what is AI being used for in this younger audience? And, a lot of times I think, oh, AI, that's just like a computer science classroom for a high school student or something. But no, not necessarily, right? And you guys are doing some innovative things, teaching the youngest about AI and kind of how it's changing their world as well.
Yeah, but I think when I step back and think about education for a long time, we always talked about the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I think we're entering into a new world where it's going to be the 4 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, and artificial intelligence skills, if we can massage that a little bit. And the idea is that AI is already here. Every time you try to send a text and it tries to predict your next word, that's artificial intelligence. Every time you're on Netflix and it tries to curate for you movies it thinks you will like based on your past viewing history, that's artificial intelligence. We were out training all the state education commissioners in the country about 6 months ago in Phoenix and took a Waymo, a self-driving car. That's artificial intelligence. So, it's here already. We think everybody's going to need to know how to use this. When we speak about this publicly, we don't think AI is going to replace people, but we do think that people with AI skills will replace those without AI skills in the future. Mm-hmm. And in that model, all of our kids need to have AI literacy in order to be competitive in the new world they're going to go into. But they need to do it in a safe and productive way.
That's a really good point. I guess, you think back not too long ago, 20, 30 years, boy, there was a lot of people that didn't know how to turn on a computer back in the Windows 3.1 operating system days, and even before that, and certainly didn't even necessarily know how to type on a keyboard. And boy, you think now, if you don't know how to turn on a computer, log in, get email, kind of a deficit. And I kind of see you're teeing it up for AI kind of being that next big wave that comes through society.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think, but we did figure it out, right? Like my kids like to tease me all the time. Tell us again when there was no internet and the phone was attached to the wall, right? And there was no microwave ovens. How did you eat? Which I get is an indictment of me as a parent that doesn't really use the stove very much. But the truth was, for the first 20 plus years of my life, there was no internet. We called the internet the Encyclopedia Britannica in my family's living room. And we were missing the S volume. So I had a lot of knowledge gaps there for any S words. But that's true. And we figured it out, right? I remember when cell phones first came into existence. And they had all the New York City stockbrokers had these giant cell phones with these giant carrying cases. And I was like, look at that guy. I'm never going to have one of these things. These people are idiots. And then as I retired, I think I was turning in 2 cell phones to my job. So we've got to be open to this idea that things change and we are able to adapt as we go. We were able to figure out the internet. We were able to figure out cell phones. We're going to be able to figure this out too. As I said earlier, people are already interacting with AI, right? If you go on a Google search and you're looking for vacations in the Caribbean, the next thing you know, you're surrounded by ads for vacations in the Caribbean, right? Because there's an AI bot that has read that and now knows what you want and is going to try to give you the information it thinks you want. So we've got to learn how to surf this wave. And that's kind of what our job is at Day of AI.
Well, and I think what's kind of interesting and maybe a little bit unique is just as you're bringing up, I mean, there's a lot of talk about limiting screen time and the impacts of screen time on young kids and all that. But, this AI is kind of going everywhere, right? It's not just on a screen. I mean, it could be, and I don't want to say her name because she's here on my desk, but there's a girl named Alexa that, now it's got AI, and there's Google devices and Siri and all these other ones that are kind of listening in. And quite frankly, I've got a little girl who turns 2 this week and another one will turn 5 here in just a month. And sometimes we do use AI to help supplement daddy's imagination, because the bedtime stories, sometimes I can't get too creative, after a long day, Jeff. And we have been known to ask it to create a story about, a unicorn going for an ice cream or something like that. And it's it is kind of interesting how it picks right up, and the kids do love it. I tell you that much.
Well, you're bringing back memories from when my kids were little, and they were always asking for rainbow unicorn stories, but there was no AI to help me at that point. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. It's ubiquitous. With that said, and one of the things we stress is kids still need to have a knowledge base.
Yeah.
They still need to have balance in their lives where they're able to turn the screens off or stop talking to Alexa in your case. Like there has to be a way that we think about how do we remain human in this new day of AI, and how do you strike that balance as a parent, recognizing that your children are probably going to need these skills in the marketplace they're going to be going into in the future. On the other hand, you want to protect them and make sure that they're still getting what they need to thrive as human beings.
Well, and one of the things I was reading through some of the reports and some of the great, I got to tell you, like if you got to go to Jeff's website, it's a really good wealth of information. But one of the things that jumped out to me, 43% of teens use AI chatbots for emotional support, and nearly 1 in 5 of them are using them romantically. I mean, this is, as a parent, and luckily, look, my kids aren't to that level yet, but many parents have, teenagers, and there was also some stats in there about, how kids are using the AI way, way more than adults. And it's one of those things where if you don't know about it, you don't use it, you don't understand it, it's kind of hard to be a parent and help guide a kid if you don't really have awareness or knowledge of what AI is capable of or what it's even doing with your children, right?
Well, you've hit on a very important point, which is what parents don't always have visibility into their kids' worlds with technology. It becomes much more tricky because kids have cell phones, they have laptops, they're not always in the same room with you. And we partnered with Common Sense Media to build a toolkit for families so parents or school districts can use this for families to have conversations with kids about their technology use. I think Common Sense Media had a stat which was similar to yours, which I think was 70% of kids have an AI companion or its equivalent or another type, or they're using another type of AI technology, but only 30% of parents have any idea the kids are using any kind of AI. And so there's a real gap between what's happening with kids and what their parents think is happening. And we're trying to close that gap by providing resources, explanations on what AI is, how to talk to your kids about it in a smart way. And honestly, you don't have to be a computer science expert to talk to your kid about technology. The very fact that you're having a conversation and you're willing to learn even a little bit about it is more than sufficient as a parent, right? You don't need to be an expert in AI to be an expert parent. You are the parent, so you can certainly make sure that you're involved in your kid's life and having these discussions. A child that knows you're asking about these things, I think that's a good thing to happen. Because a lot of times kids think no one's watching what they're doing and they're on their own and they can do what they want. And that does sometimes lead to unfortunate outcomes.
Well, and I will, major kudos. The family toolkit that you guys have released in conjunction with Common Sense is fantastic. I mean, it talks about how we sort Legos to kind of explain algorithms, and it talks about inherent bias in AI models. And I mean, I think one of the fears, and we kind of already brought it up, like the Netflix and the Caribbean vacations, like all those algorithms, they start to get to know you and they build a profile. And I think the concern is that if I only like country music, for example, then the AI is only going to recommend country music to me. And you kind of get into this echo chamber, for lack of a better term. And it may not be too big of a deal for just music, but when you start to think about, research and viewpoints and, other opinions and, like you said, going back to the old encyclopedias and looking, what are conflicting viewpoints on this? Is this settled science? Is this up for grabs? Is this up for debate? I think there's a concern that, maybe we get to a spot where everything's just so darn personalized that we kind of shut out everybody else in the world. And that's probably not the healthiest thing to do either, especially as you're a kid trying to learn what this world is all about and how to process change and process people with different viewpoints and all that kind of stuff, right? So I do appreciate the intentional detail you went into. And I will say, I like the AI stuff. I'm a tech guy kind of, but it's really meant for folks that are familiar with AI, but also not familiar with AI either. So it's a really good, kind of a a primer, if you will, if you just want to get involved and have some meaningful conversations with your kiddos.
Well, I mean, the phrase echo chamber is exactly right. And we see that happening in this country, right? A lot of people believe, especially at MIT, I think, that part of the polarization in politics is because people are being fed information that's attuned to what they are interested in. And it becomes this echo chamber where you only see one point of view. You don't get to see an alternative point of view. And that creates people to not even be willing to discuss an alternative view or be open to an alternative point of view. And I think we need to make sure that our kids understand this so that they're able to have balance in their lives and to be critical thinkers, right? If I could have any wish for the students in the future in America, it's that they're critical thinkers and healthy skeptics of this technology. Yes, it can be incredibly powerful, but you also have to recognize it has its limitations and it's not always right.
No, I believe they call that hallucinating, right?
Correct.
Hallucinates quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, part of when I present publicly, when I work with teachers, is we go through all the downsides and problems with AI, from voice clones to deep fakes to energy consumption, plagiarism, hallucinations, where sometimes the technology just makes up answers, right? For those people that don't know, like I show a slide of someone asked one of the AI programs, how do I keep the cheese from sliding off my pizza? And the answer was, add 1/8 of a cup of glue. Well, that's not exactly a great answer. But it's believed the technology found that by scanning either a tweet from Twitter or a Reddit thread when somebody sarcastically said that.
Sure.
The computer didn't know it was sarcastic and presented it as the true information, right? And so, at one point there was a famous one going around, where did cheeseburgers come from? Cheeseburgers come from cheeseburger trees. Well, I want to go there. I want to go have my own orchard. So, like this, kids need to learn to trust but verify, because sometimes the information is just simply not correct.
Well, and that's an excellent point. And the other point too is really, the keeper of those AI models, I guess, for lack of a better term. And we think about it in even the medical community, right? I mean, if you have a study that you're doing and the study is only from the Northeast United States and it's all, 40 to 60-year-old white men, it's kind of hard to take that sample size of 100 and apply that to everybody in the whole entire world. I mean, so the kind of junk in, junk out, who's training these models, what are they learning from? And yeah, I mean, I've got a Tesla. I get a little concerned about the self-driving, because if it's learning from other humans, there's a lot of bad drivers on the road. And I remember a prior version where like the Teslas were literally rolling through stop signs because that was a learned behavior that they learned from humans, that like you come to a stop sign, hey, no cop, no stop, and you would just roll right through. Well, probably not the best thing for AI to learn from us. So in some cases, we have bad habits too, right?
And people are surprised these large language models are drawing from like Twitter and Reddit, which don't always have the most accurate information. That's been my experience. Like, really, this is the best we can do, And so you've just got to be really skeptical of what you're getting, and you have to be also really precise when you ask AI questions, right? The more precise you are, prescriptive you can be, the better information you're going to get back. And I would say, look, I have ChatGPT on my phone, and I probably interact with it 4 or 5 times or more a day. At least once a day, I yell at my ChatGPT because I know it's telling me something that's not true. Right? It's giving me false information.
Yeah.
But the only reason I know that is because I already have a knowledge base. So it's critical that kids always have a knowledge base and question things. Otherwise, there's a real danger if we just kind of turn our brains over to the technology, that we become drones if we're just suddenly accept everything, every answer that's been given to us by Gemini or Grok or Chat or whatever.
And I'm an adjunct professor. I've been doing that for about 9 years now. And I will say I teach exclusively online. So I'm not in a classroom. I can't tell everyone, hey, take out a pen and pencil and let's write an essay today and see how it goes. And I will say over the last probably 2 years, it's been very challenging, Jeff, because, I've literally had some students submit assignments, and I had an inkling that it was AI. But the one that really stands out is like someone literally copy and pasted it, and they left that line at the bottom that said like, if you would like me to adjust the tone or make this shorter or whatever, like the AI. And I'm thinking like, gosh, how lazy can you be? I mean, like you're submitting this for a grade. And I think, I think back to some of the attorneys that have submitted, briefs to the court with totally made up
Case
cases.
law. Yeah.
I mean, like at some point, you do have that responsibility to check.
Well, I mean, I think what you're talking about is happening all over. We were out training teachers recently, and one of the English teachers was telling about how one of her students had used, I think, chat to write an essay and had to get up and present that essay to the class. And he was mispronouncing all the words in his essay, which is a clear giveaway that you didn't write this thing if you don't know what the words are. Right. So I think we've got to grapple with those things. Now, also the truth is, when I was a kid, we had these things called Cliff Notes. So we've always seen kids trying to take shortcuts around their work submissions. So this isn't new to teachers. We have wisdom and we can figure out ways around it, but it is upping the degree of difficulty significantly because of what this technology is able to do.
Well, and I've been, and I know my university and a lot of others have kind of struggled to come up with policies because it's, new and emerging. We're not really sure, but I've been pretty upfront with the students and I say, look, I think you should use it. I mean, for nothing else. And quite honestly, you said I use it daily, and it'll be something as simple as, hey, I wrote this email. Can you read this over for me and take the emotion out of it, or make sure it's professional, or make sure I didn't spell any words wrong, or just. So I mean, as far as a tool, I think it's good, but like you said, you have to have that kind of requisite knowledge. You can't. It's kind of like the calculator, right? Calculators are great, but you also need to be able to show your work and kind of do the longhand math if you need to, so you can kind of be a check on it. And I think that's the part where a lot of people right now are kind of struggling with it, because there needs to be a space between like, I'm not doing anything with AI and I'm turning my whole life over to AI and I'm never using my brain again. Like somewhere in the middle is probably where we need to land.
Well, these are the exact conversations that we need to have. And let me give you an example. My kids went to the Boston Public Schools. And they can't write in cursive. I guess BPS doesn't teach cursive to kids. Okay, fine. Maybe I can live without that. My kids were born in Boston, have been raised in Boston, but can't get anywhere in Boston without Waze or another GPS driving app.
Yeah.
I can get everywhere in the city of Boston because there was no Waze or GPS when I was a kid. I needed to know landmarks and street signs and so my kids don't have that spatial relationship skill that I might have. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. But if you keep factoring that out, now some people are saying kids don't need to learn how to write, that AI can just write for them. And I would argue, oh, no. Writing is thinking. We got to teach our kids how to order their thoughts, make a case, provide arguments, right? Like if we just turn our brain completely off and let it atrophy and let the computer do the work, what are we doing? Yeah. And how do we know in a time when the technology is often giving incorrect or biased results that what we're getting is to be believed unless we have our own experiential knowledge base? And so that's why, this is about reasonableness. If you're a parent, you want to have your kids be exposed to this, but you also want to turn the screens off, turn the phones off, and, make them be part of the human race as well.
So I know you do a tremendous amount of work with, teachers and educational leaders, superintendents, and of course you come from that world. So you've got some really interesting insights. What are your colleagues kind of thinking about this? Are there big misconceptions or big fears or other kind of things that make people reluctant to embrace this, talk about it, integrate it, use it? Like what are you kind of seeing in the field out there?
Yeah. So a few things. I think a lot of people are still kind of, even though it's been several years now, digging out of COVID. And so people are saying, oh my God, one more thing. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. And we've got to get people there. And I think at Day of AI, we do that by explaining to them, we don't think AI is going to replace teachers. Teachers, we believe that personal relationships are the foundation of all things in education. With that said, AI can make your life easier as a teacher by taking away a lot of the administrative minutia to allow you more time and space to, God forbid, wait for it, spend more time building and creating engaging, exciting lessons for your kids, which I would argue is why teachers got into teaching in the first place, right? And so imagine if we can give you that time and space back. You gave the example of, taking the emotion out of writing a letter. That's something that teachers go through every day. Like, oh my God, a kid was misbehaving in class. You're very frustrated with them. You need to make the point that the kid is not acting right, but you don't want to like step over and offend the parent either. ChatGPT can be that initial first step to write that letter, and then you can go back in because you have expertise and tweak it a little bit. But that'll save you innumerable hours of hand wringing and hemming and hawing about how to write this. And so I think, once you have some of these things, that allows you to go back to doing what you love, which is, building great lessons for your kids. So there's some real positives here, but we have to be cautious because how do we make sure that we don't just turn things over to the technology? And let me give you an example. You could have a kid never look at a paper and just have it written by ChatGPT. You could have a teacher grade a paper with Brisk, which is an excellent AI program that you can program to help grade some of your papers. Really helpful if you've got 180 kids caseload of kids and essays to write. But there's a danger that if the kid doesn't go back and infuse his own ideas into it, and if the teacher doesn't go back after Brisk has gone through and kind of done a preliminary screening and personalize it and add their voice, like you have a situation where the two computers are just going to fight it out and everybody else goes to the beach, right? Like, right? Like what are we doing? Like I'll have my computer talk to your computer. We'll get back to me, right? Like that kind of thing. And so how do we find that balance? I'll give you another example. I was a special education teacher for a long time. I would spend hours writing IEPs, individual education plans for each kid. Great. Magic School now has this amazing suite of services, and one of the things is the IEP generator. It can build you very quickly a foundation for the IEP, saving you all kinds of time that you would ordinarily be spending on this. But unless you can go back and infuse your expertise as a teacher, what you know from your own pedagogy, but also what you know about the child into that document, it's not going to be as impactful, right? Only Johnny needs to sit at a table away from the rest of the kids after lunch because he likes to smack kids for the first 10 minutes until the sugar burns off of him, right? I mean, like only you have that particular expertise about how to manage your classroom. And so if you don't go back in and add that expertise, then you're not using AI the way it's supposed to be used. It's supposed to help you go further faster. It's not supposed to replace your brain, your judgment, your knowledge.
I was asked a couple of years ago by Child Care Aware Virginia to develop a cybersecurity course. So we've been teaching that, and it was interesting during the pilot because I didn't include AI in the pilot, but every class I taught, everybody wanted to talk about it, right? So the version we teach now does have AI, and I think it's important to, talk about kind of the security risks and how AI is learning and what privacy is or is not there. But also it's fun to kind of give some examples. And like you're saying, I mean, I'm working in a classroom of 3-year-olds and it's a rainy day outside and we can't go out on the playground. Give me 6 ideas of what we can do inside, and it's like, oh, okay, fantasy land and story time and dress up time. And, all these scenarios, like instantly within seconds, you get some interesting ideas. Or, I'm a director, I'm an owner. I've got the parents that are always late with their tuition payments. Help me craft a letter that's professional, respectful, not full of emotion, but just, hey, it lays out the facts of tuition's overdue, I need to get paid, and here are some options. And again, it does a fantastic job of at least giving you the baseline to kind of start from and thinking about it as well. Or, I'm reading this particular book to the 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds. What are some, sensory activities that would, complement what we're learning about in the classroom? I mean, I just kind of that, I don't know if it's the right word, Jeff, but like a thought partner or a brainstorming, tool or something. And again, most of the stuff I know we've said like Grok, which is the one from, I guess, XAI, which, Twitter and X and Elon Musk. We've got obviously Gemini with Google. We've got ChatGPT with OpenAI. We got
Cola wars. That's what's happening amongst the tech companies, right?
Oh,
They're fighting for market share.
yeah, and the thing is, they're free right now, or there's some versions of them that are free. But as we know, with kind of the apps we download on our phone and everything else, nothing's really free, right? We give up some privacy when we use these tools, right?
Well, Andy, that is such a salient point. Free is almost never free, right? And so there's usually going to be a cost. A lot of people offer things for free for a year or two until you get used to it. It's part of your routine, and then they, pull the rug out and say, "Oh, by the way, starting next month, there's going to be a $29 fee for to use this." But the other cost, which is the one that not all parents are aware of, I think, is this idea of student data and their privacy, right?
Yeah.
A lot of vendors are out there in schools trying to sell products, but tech directors need to start asking, and principals or early childhood center leaders need to start asking, like, if I do use this product, where is that data going? How do I protect my kids and make sure that there is a level of privacy there in a way that, frankly, in the K-12 space, we didn't do a good job of prior to this. And so knowing that, when I think about it with my own kids, like, I had to explain to my kids very early, like, the internet is forever. Anything you put on the internet, like, can be tracked back to you, right? And so you've got to be very careful. This is the most surveilled generation of children in the history of the world. When I was a kid, you used to just go run out and play, and now everything is supervised, everything is organized, everything is tracked, right? And it's just like, you've got to be very careful about that when you're dealing with young children. And so if you're bringing AI type programming into a school setting or a care setting of any kind, you need to make sure you've got somebody that can read the fine print and know where that back end data is going and how to protect kids.
And I think the big thing is now these AI models are looking for data. They're looking for use cases. They're looking for, how are you using this tool? And that's valuable to them, right? So in exchange for giving out their services, I guess, for free, there is really no expectation of privacy here, is there? And I think digital stewardship or citizenship or whatever you want to term this, look, if you wouldn't go out to the shopping mall and scream out your home address, your date of birth, your passwords, your credit card number, like, probably shouldn't be trusting our AI with that either, right?
Yeah, and I think, you've got to apply a reasonableness standard where, people are always in danger of being hacked, right? Like, or losing them, passwords being stolen. I think, those things happen. I think everyone probably in their lifetime has gotten that email where it's like, you're part of a data file that was stolen, blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't stop us necessarily from using the technology. It makes us feel a little anxious, I would say, and gives us some agita. But at the end of the day, what you want to do is try to be as thoughtful as possible about how we protect particularly young people with their data and their privacy, to try to make sure that we're limiting any of those breaches or any kind of inappropriate use of their data.
Yeah, because this, like you said, the digital footprint is there and it's there forever and it doesn't go away. And in fact, it kind of gets added to every day, right? What did I click? What did I watch? In some case, and I'm shocked. You go on your phone and you look at like microphone access permissions. And I was doing this in a class a couple of weeks ago, and I said, just out of curiosity, everyone go to your settings and look at your microphone and your permissions. Somebody in the class had like 27 apps using their microphone. They had no idea. But, you download the free app, you grant the permissions, and now it's there. And then you wonder why you're getting ads for everything you talk about all day long. But it was even something benign. It was like a calculator app that in no way would ever need the recorder or the microphone. But that was the trade-off, right?
Right. And I think, I don't know if it was Alexa, but another type program like that. But, one of those programs was found to be listening 24/7, right? Unless you specifically went in and kind of turned it off. And so, your conversation in your home may not be as private as you think it is unless you take steps to make sure that it is.
And I'm not saying that to scare anybody. I'm just like, eyes wide
right.
open on this. Again, like, it is, especially if we're talking about young children, and there's, we've got, FERPA and all these other laws about what educators can and can't talk about, and certainly HIPAA for the health side of the house. But In some cases, they're looking to mine your data. They're looking to gain information. And right now, and I know you're going to, hopefully we'll talk about it here in a minute. Really, there's a void of regulatory schema out there. I mean, as you mentioned, there's so many companies all competing around the world, not just here in the United States, but and there's really not a lot of guardrails. And that's something I think some of the leaders, the Altmans of the world and others have kind of, they've been a little transparent about, right? I mean, do we need regulation on this? We don't want to kill a new and emerging industry, but.
So it's very concerning to me, both as a longtime educator, but also as a parent. What I would say is this: first and foremost, I believe in capitalism. I believe in big tech. What they've been able to create for the betterment of kids. With that said, I think in America sometimes we have the wild, wild west mentality where we don't think we need to regulate. And what I would argue, and particularly in this time of our country being somewhat polarized and fractured, I'd like to think the one place that we could agree on is that we want what's best for our kids. And if we want what's best for our kids, I think in this one unique circumstance, we do need regulation for our children to protect them as they begin to learn how to use AI. And that would be the one constraint I would put on the rest of the business world. If they want to go, they want to be the wild, wild west, law of the jungle, whatever that is, fine, have at it. But when it comes to our kids, I think we need to be a little bit more circumspect and think thoughtfully about the best way to handle this to protect our kids, because we want what's best for them, whether you're Democrat or Republican. And I think you're starting to see some agreement bubble up around that very thing. On the other hand, there's always the press of America as the big capitalistic society, right? If it was up to me, I would argue that we now more than ever need regulation, national policy for AI student use. And let me tell you why. Not just because we need to keep kids safe, but also because in America, often we do things by local control. Like everyone kind of gets a say and we don't do things nationally. But this is such a profound technology. It's going to have such profound economic effects on our children. I think this in many ways is our Sputnik moment, where we need to come together as a nation and really focus on this. The danger here is artificial intelligence was created in America, but when we take the PISA exam, the international test that compares us to other countries in 2029, which is the first time PISA is going to offer a discrete AI literacy test, we might be number 28 in the country in the world, on the AI test, which would be atrocious if we're the country that created AI and we're not a top performing AI literacy country for our children, right? Wow. And so I just think that we are headed to a situation where that could happen. We created AI technology in America, but our kids come in and score, in the mid-20s or something on AI literacy, and that would be truly unfortunate. And the only thing that could really ameliorate that would be if we could get people together from all sides of the aisle in a national model to make sure that this is really critical for our kids. China's already doing it. Colombia is doing it. All these countries are realizing that this is the future and are taking steps to make sure that their kids are prepared for it.
And some of the tools that you've put out, curriculum and talking, and of course we call it Day of AI, but this is way more than just one day, by the way, right? So,
right.
Really, I was reading even the comments from the teachers, and they were complimentary. Hey, we appreciated how we got ways to integrate AI into kind of everyday classroom situations that we're doing anyway. But it was a good example of kind of bringing AI in, talking about it, demystifying it, and having that educational moment, which I thought was good.
That's my favorite part of the job is working with teachers, right? Because you can show them how this can make your life easier. You can also hand them free curriculum materials that they can use in their classrooms. But I think one of the most profound things we do, which we don't have a lot of action on the website, but we should change that, is we tell teachers, you don't have to throw out your great lesson right now. You can take your great lesson and we'll workshop with you to include some AI into it to make it even better. And that is a real carrot for teachers who like are worried that, oh my God, what I've been teaching is wrong or whatever. No. In almost all cases, what you're teaching is correct. We just think you can use this technology to make it even better. And we're starting to see some really great lessons that are out there for kids to really help them, to learn in the truest sense of the word.
Well, after the pandemic, certainly we've seen, especially in early childhood, we've seen a tremendous amount of deregulation, dysregulation, 4, 5, 6-year-olds that aren't potty trained, challenging behavior in the classrooms. And of course, this comes on top of all the other, challenging things that we've been dealing with as well. And I found it interesting, some of the teachers, that have shared with me, like, I've been using AI because, look, maybe I'm not the expert in autism and I don't have the exposure. I don't, really work with kids with autism that often, but I can go on AI. I can get some ideas. Again, fact check and make sure that's providing, good solutions. But again, it's a starting place. It's some research. In many ways, it's kind of akin to what you talked about before. Instead of going to the library and the old encyclopedias, this is kind of the new Google search, and going to AI is kind of your first, researcher saying, hey, perform some research on what are some techniques I could use in my classroom today to, like you mentioned, little Johnny's having a hard time with A, B, or C. What are some strategies I could use? Or other kind of challenging things that teachers may not be equipped for, may not have the background for, or quite frankly, may not have time to think about, right?
I think that's absolutely correct. And, related to that, and what you said earlier, it really resonates with me, which is chat has replaced Google for me, right? Like as ChatGPT is my new Google in some ways. But to be able to just ask it questions, and I'm an adult, and sometimes there's things I don't know where I feel like, God, I should probably know this. To be able to ask an AI program without embarrassing myself in public is super helpful. Well, if that happens to me as an adult, you could imagine for a kid how problematic that can look like. And if you're a teacher and you've got a class with a lot of different ability levels, maybe you've got 30 kids in your class and you teach 8th grade science. And yeah, most of the kids are reading at about a middle school level, but you've got one kid reading at a 2nd grade level and another kid reading at a college level. You now, for the first time, can send whatever the lesson's on. Let's say it's an engineering lesson on the big dig that happened in Massachusetts. You can send a 1-page summary written at a 2nd grade level to that one kid. You can send a 1-page summary also on the big dig written at a college level to another kid. And then all the kids can do the activity together, and you've kept all the kids engaged. Whereas in the past, the 2nd grade, the kid who was reading at a 2nd grade level, it was too high for them. They couldn't keep up. They were checking out. And the kid that was reading at a college level was bored, and they were checking out. And so there's a way to just beam these articles to a kid's computer without embarrassing them in any way, without calling them out as different, but to keep them on track. And that's one of the most profound things about artificial intelligence. In education, we often say we differentiate instruction. I've been in education a long time. I can tell you, I'm not sure we really differentiate instruction. Some of our best teachers make an attempt at it, and that's not because they're not talented enough. It's just we haven't had the tools to be able to do it. AI can actually help teachers differentiate like they've always wanted to do, and it's going to be really profound for kids living in poverty, kids who are special needs, kids learning a language, to be able to catch up and to come back and get personalized, differentiated instruction that can keep them on track, or in many cases catch them up.
The other thing, it's funny, I'm taking the family on a cruise here in a couple of weeks, and look, my kids are visual learners and they love the schedules, right? It helps keep them kind of regulated, helps them know what's going on. So I just had some fun, and I made like a bunch of like computer generated little tiles about like, we're going to wake up in the morning, then we're going to go, mini golf, then we're going to go swim, then we're going to go eat at the Windjammer buffet, and then we're going to go have ice cream. And it's like the cruise cabin's magnet, right? So I put little magnets on there and it sticks to all the metal in the cabinet, but it's like a visual schedule. And Jeff, I'm not an artist. So the fact that this, AI was able to like create these fun little images that are, appealing to my kids was pretty darn neat. And, let's face it, most of our teachers, we don't have a lot of extra money laying around. We can't go out and hire a graphic designer to,
Right.
do all this stuff. But I mean, it's provided a fun little project that took me way less than an hour. And now I've got something that's really personal, really useful, and something that I think is going to, make their experience even better. So,
Well, this is the example that we're talking about of amplifying and augmenting what a human wants to do and can do, right? Things that you never could in the past do, or it would take you just hours and hours of time. You whip this up in under an hour, and how much more exciting is that trip going to be? And the kids who probably benefit from seeing a visual representation of what's happening every day, like they benefit from it too. And it's just kind of, it builds on that positivity.
I know you've got a big effort coming up. You've got in 2026, you've got the Youth AI Festival coming up. Part of that is going to be this Bill of Rights, right? A student's AI Bill of Rights. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what that is, why that's needed, what you hope to achieve with the Bill of Rights?
So it's one of my most exciting projects that we're working on inside the nonprofit. And when we think about our kids, we often talk about them as being digital natives. They were born into this technology. They have a facility with it that someone older like myself, who would be considered a digital immigrant, doesn't have, right? My kids were born into this technology. I told you before, there was no technology until I was in college, right? And so I've had to migrate to this technology. And when you have something like that, you have a unique situation where even in education, sometimes, I can't believe we're going to say this, but we're going to say it out loud, the kids know more about the technology than we do.
That's true.
Well, rather than fight against that, why don't we have kids demonstrate their facility with AI? And in this case, we are very interested in hearing what students think about AI in general. And so we're going to fly in 2 kids from every state to serve as student senators for their state. They're coming to MIT and also the Edward M. Kennedy Institute, which is an exact replica of the U.S. Senate. And they're going to act as student senators and draft a national student AI policy based on their experience with everything from social media to AI and everything in between, because we want to hear what they think. And the best part about this is, and it's kind of a sad testament to where we are, but we'll have a national student AI policy long before we'll have an adult national AI policy, right? And I think that is a statement unto itself. And so this idea that kids can really demonstrate leadership in what they know about artificial intelligence, but also how they feel about it, is going to be really important.
When we think about the other challenges that might be coming, is there anything in particular that kind of keeps you up at night?
I think there's a few things. I think a lot of districts are just starting to get into this, and they immediately go to this idea that we need to have a school committee policy on AI. But actually, when we train districts, we recommend they don't start with a school committee policy. School committee policies typically run from 10 to 20 years before they're updated. AI is moving so quickly, you could do a school committee policy, but you might have to change that policy 6 months later. So instead, we ask schools to start with their high school handbook and start from a place of their values as a school district. We value academic honesty. Great. In that case, the kid needs to disclose if they're using AI for a project, or the teacher needs to disclose if they want you or want you not to use AI for the project. And just begin, right? Dip your toe in the water and start the process, because there's an old rock and roll phrase that says, hold on loosely, but don't let go. And I think what we're going to need to do is kind of act in that fashion for a while this settles a little bit, because things are going to be changing rapidly. And what you don't want to do is be caught in something that becomes obsolete relatively quickly.
What else is on the agenda for the Day of AI? What do you got coming up?
Oh my God. We do in-person trainings for schools and districts throughout the country, throughout the world. We have free virtual trainings. If people go on our website, they can sign up for free virtual trainings just to begin the process of getting into it. The festival this summer, we talked about the Student AI Bill of Rights, but we also have AI for a Better World, where kids will use AI to solve world problems, whether that's about hunger or climate, etc. And we have AI in the arts, where kids will integrate artificial intelligence into musical theater or visual arts. and show their work. And so it's just, it's a fascinating time. I think during my 32 years in education, we had something called Ed Reform. And basically what that was states in the country kind of gave over additional funds in exchange for test scores and accountability and standards, and kind of helped put this kind of skeleton or architecture onto education, which before that was really kind of 1,000 flowers in bloom. There wasn't a lot of organization. And so that was all really important. But for the first 15 years, that really worked. And American kids rocketed up on the nation's report card and really showed pronounced gains. But for the last 15 years, we've been stalled. We have not moved the needle. Some people attribute that to social media. Some people attribute that to other factors. Maybe that revolution had run its course. But whatever the case is, we need something new in education for our kids. And I think AI is going to start that next revolution. It's going to help us differentiate and personalize an education in a way we never could before, and really help teachers get the time and space back that they need to build exciting lessons so your kids are learning through play, excited about school, and maximizing their abilities.
We always like to share a little advice for up and coming folks, and I'd certainly be remiss if I didn't pick your brain on this. So if you're in school now, if you want to be a teacher, if you're maybe in college studying to be a teacher, what's important to know about? Should we be thinking about incorporating, AI more into our bachelor's degrees and education? Like what do you kind of see as a skill set for the future teachers? Because obviously it's going to be way different than it was just 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think there's 3 things you need. First, you have to have a love of kids. You really have to enjoy children. I was a middle school principal for a long time. A lot of people don't like middle school children. I loved it, right? Because it's hormone heaven. They're going through a lot at that time. So you really have to, love kids. I think the second thing you have to have is like a good background in education. So you've got to go to a graduate school of education and learn, Bloom's taxonomy, right? You've got to learn even about Maslow before Bloom. You've got to get the necessary equipment for how to be a good teacher. But then the third thing I think you need is how these AI skills can improve your practice in the classroom. How doing this can make your life not only easier, but give you back the time you need to really build these great lessons and help your kids along that journey as well. And so I think it's a combination of those 3 things, certainly knowledge base on education, a love for kids, and then how to use these tools to be even the best version of yourself you can be. And I think AI, in a strange way, is going to bring people back into the profession, and because people are going to want to teach again. I think a lot of people have been, burdened by bureaucratic stuff, and I think people just wanted to teach. And I think this technology is going to free people up to do just that.
It's certainly a common complaint that you hear. I got into this to be a teacher. I didn't get into it to, push a bunch of paperwork around or do all this administrative work or whatever. And if AI can help lighten the load on that, that's a big win. And you and I are old enough to appreciate the switch from the old overhead projector elbow type machines where the teachers literally drew, or if they were fancy, sometimes they'd figure out how to print slides back then, right? Remember you had the books of slides or the carousel.
I had the blue fingers from the mimeograph machines. You remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Right, we've just lost half the audience. I don't know what we're talking about.
And then the switch over to PowerPoint, which, is many were just so resistant to. And, now obviously PowerPoint and Google Slides and all that, kind of the mainstay of any presentation or PowerPoint or what, and now you kind of think, gosh, this whole seismic shift again of, just what's AI going to look like in my classroom? How can I use it to enhance and customize to some degree? And I guess that's interesting too, as we think about it, even if you know nothing about AI, this is kind of a journey you could almost go on with some of the students together. And I've certainly done that in some of the class. Said, hey, I don't know who's got a problem they're trying to address right now. And we type it up, a little paragraph or two, and let's just put it into AI and see what it thinks, and just kind of learn together to see what this is capable of, what its limitations are, what it can do, what it can't do, of course. But it's been really fascinating to see, and I'm excited, kind of. And I think we're at a point now where internet connectivity is finally, it hasn't reached every corner of the globe, of course, but with things like Starlink and other things that are out there now, certainly our world is more connected than ever, which means I think more so now than 20 years ago, folks will be able to benefit from this new technology because they'll have access to it much easier than, again, the 2400 baud modem or the 9600 baud. So that's kind of exciting too. And you're really at the forefront. I mean, you think about it now, Jeff, this is the stupidest AI is ever going to be, right? It's only going to get better from here. So who knows what it may be doing in the future.
Well, and I love the idea that you're bringing up, which is AI is really just play around with it. We learn through play, so let's play. And you don't have to be an expert. The people at MIT will tell you there's no such thing as an AI expert. And they're at MIT, right?
Yeah, that's good to hear.
They're the experts, but the reality is they're humble enough to know this thing is changing all the time. So don't feel embarrassed. Everybody's on their own journey to how to figure this out, and just starting is a good place. And no matter where you are, it's just it's like everything else. You have to get over that initial shock of the thing and wariness and skepticism. But once you get involved, I think people will be pretty excited about it.
Well, and it's really, in some ways, it's not even about the technology. It's really about the people, right? How do we inspire the teachers? How do we give them confidence? How do we provide that space, that creativity, so they can make the leap and begin testing this out, incorporating this, trying this out in a way that's not going to be, punitive, of course. It's about protecting our children, making sure they can benefit from this, but also making sure they're going to be safe when they're doing it, making sure they still have the ability to think, critically, of course, and not just turning their brain off and letting AI do all the work. But it's also, making sure our leaders are prepared. And I love what you guys are doing with the AI, bill. I think that's, fantastic idea. And what better way to hopefully get some national attention on this? And I know your work is now global as well, many different countries. But it's a moment here where kind of the choices we're going to make and the conversations we're going to have very well may shape the future and kind of the rollout of this. So I really thank you for all the work you're doing, from the curriculum to the training to just the spotlight you're shining on this. It's truly phenomenal work, and I'm so glad to have a conversation with you today and really kind of watch and see where this goes. And if people want to stay on top of your work, want to be a part of it, want to learn more about what you're doing, what are the best ways to get plugged into your network here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can reach us at dayofai.org or dayofaiusa.org. Both will work. If you need to reach out to me personally, we accept emails, obviously. I'm just Jeff at jeff@dayofai.org.
Well, fantastic. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for all the work you're doing and all the work that your team is doing. Any final thoughts you want to leave people with?
No, listen, I told you guys I did 32 years in education. I'm more excited now than I've ever been. I think there's possibility here if we can do this right. It's one of those inflection points in history where this is something new and different, and it's going to change how we function as a society. So dip your toe in the water and come join, because it's been fun.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much to Jeff. And of course, thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. I certainly enjoyed picking Jeff's brain and really thinking about how we frame this as empowerment and not fear, right? And we're not trying to replace the human element of teachers or early childhood education. It's really about a different tool that's out there now to strengthen all of that. Focus on what matters, give you some time back so you can, put your best foot forward, and also try to level the playing field in some ways. So really curious. If you haven't tried it, there's a bunch of free things, Chat GPT, as we said, Gemini, Grok, a whole bunch of others. Claude is out there, of course. So, take a look, try some of this stuff out and see if it works for you. But anyway, thank you for joining us very much. We appreciate it. We hope you stick with us and see you on the next episode of Early Childhood Chats. Until then, this is Andy Roszak saying, talk to you soon.